How to make eye-catching thumbnails, the 5 rules that all pro YouTubers live by. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not good at that stuff. I don't think I'm very creative. Just use a template. That's fine. It's fine. Stop. If you're looking to create amazing thumbnails for your content, this video is for you. What's up, guys? Corey Oldham here, and in this video, we're going to talk about the 5 rules for creating eye-catching thumbnails that all pro YouTubers live by. But before we jump into that, let's go through the things of what not to do when it comes to creating your thumbnails. One of the first things you don't want to do is just leave it up to YouTube. And you certainly don't want to do this. Use one of their pre-loaded images. So I have an example here of a video that I just uploaded, and YouTube will actually give you 3 still frames of your video. Now, I certainly don't want to use any of these, especially this one. My finger's on my lip, but it almost looks like I'm picking my nose. I also don't want to use a template, because how many people have thought of using a template? Probably a lot. Now, if you really want to stand out, you've got to be different. So the way to stand out is to be different. Don't use a template. Another don't for your YouTube thumbnail is don't use a low resolution image. I also don't want to use an image that's too cluttered. It's got too much going on. People don't want to click. I also don't want to use clickbait. Now, if you're using text in your thumbnail, you don't want to use too much or too small of text. No one wants to read a book when they're looking at thumbnails. Now, this guy, you may recognize this guy, and he uses text in his thumbnails. But if the text becomes too much, people aren't going to read it. That's why guys like Alex Hormozy are using 5 words or less. But to recap, don't use templates. Don't use a cluttered design. Don't use poor image quality. Don't use too much text or too small text that people can't read. Remember, they're probably looking at these thumbnails on their phone. Now, when it comes to creating eye-catching thumbnails, we just shared what not to do. If you like that, go ahead and click subscribe, stick around. But now let's get into what to do. The 5 rules that all pro YouTubers live by. The first thing, the very first rule, the eyeballs. Make sure you're using eyeballs or faces inside of your thumbnails. Using eyeballs in your thumbnails allows your viewer to connect to you. You know, as human nature, we want to connect to other people, and a great way to do that is look them in the eyes. Years ago, I was actually teaching some high-ticket sales to business owners, and we were talking about influence. And when you go through influence, there's things that you can look at in terms of verbal cues, nonverbal cues, and so we went through that. When it comes to influence, the words that come out of your mouth only create about 7% influence. The tone in which you say it is 38. So over 5 times more influence on how you say things versus what you said in the first place. Now, the big winner is body language. 55%. 55% of influence comes from body language. Now, when it comes to a thumbnail, we can actually create connection with our body language in that picture. Even for MrBeast, who has one of the largest channels on YouTube, if you look at his latest video, a whole bunch of faces, a whole bunch of eyes. Even if we're looking at this image specifically, and we're talking about this image in the top left, so you see MrBeast there, you see kiddos to his side and older people to his other side, and you look at their faces, and their faces will tell you a lot in terms of what they're thinking, how they're feeling. And we know this. All we got to do is look at the eyes. Almost every single one of his videos has a close-up of his face and of his eyes. Whether he has the typical smiley face, which he typically does, or a smirk on his face, or hey, this look on his face over here on the left. We want to definitely use eyes in almost all of our thumbnails because it creates that human connection. We can invoke emotion with our viewers. Number 2, with our thumbnails, instead of a template, we want to tell a story. When it comes to stories, we're connected to stories. We understand stories even from an early age, which is why we read stories to kids. We understand them, we can relate to them, we remember them. So when it comes to your thumbnails, you want to tell a story. If we're still using MrBeast as the example, each and every one of his thumbnails tells a story. He is a master at this. He's always telling a story. So this video right here says $1 versus $500,000 plane ticket. That image right there tells a story. It has him sitting on a plane. Now the headline itself says plane ticket, maybe like a piece of paper. What's the story? What's the frame that he's using for his image? It's him sitting inside of a luxurious plane that's plated with gold, eating an ice cream sundae. So just in that moment alone, he's actually telling a story. Now, if you're looking to tell a story within your thumbnail, the question you've got to ask is, what is your content piece? What is that video really about? And what can you tell in terms of a story in a single frame image? And if you're looking for a little bit of inspiration, the top YouTubers all live by this rule. They're all telling stories within their thumbnails. Now, if you want to flip the script and look elsewhere and find some more inspiration from something else, you can actually go to things like Hulu or Netflix and just scroll through. And what are they using? They're using those still frame images. Those are thumbnails, by the way. And each of those thumbnails, they're telling a story. So I love to scroll through Netflix or whatever the different platform is, because all those images are still frame thumbnails. And so I'm always asking myself, hey, why did that get me to click? Why didn't I click on this one or that one? Same thing with my kids or my wife. Why did they click on this or not that? Each of those still frame images, they're all telling a story. Same thing with your YouTube thumbnails. Another thing we always do, just we don't like to admit it, we judge a book by its cover. I've had this book on my shelf for 4+ years. I haven't read it. Why? I don't like the cover. The book is brilliant, but I haven't read it because I didn't like the cover. But we judge a book by its cover. We judge a video on YouTube by the thumbnail, by the story we're being told. Now, rule number 3, this is a must. A must. Use high resolution images in all of your thumbnails. But when you're creating the image, wherever you're creating it, maybe it's Canva, for example, and you're putting images within that image on there, make sure they're high resolution so they will show up really, really well on your thumbnail. Rule number 4, branding. Now, when it comes to the branding of your channel, you want to make sure that there is a similar feel and a style to all your YouTube thumbnails. Do they have to be the same? No. The viewer needs to know a little bit of what to expect when they're about to click on any of your videos on your channel. So we've used MrBeast as an example. You understand his branding or the feel of each and every one of his videos. Even though his videos are just a little bit different, you understand the feel and the vibe of his channel because he's keeping the thumbnail specifically very similar in terms of his branding. Rule number 5 that all pro YouTubers live by. Now, this one's a little bit different and there's a little bit of controversy, and I've actually alluded to it in this video already, and it is the text. And actually, it's still a question when it comes to your YouTube thumbnails. Plenty of people use text, plenty of people don't. When you look at a channel like MrBeast, who has one of the largest channels on the platform, he rarely, if ever, uses text on his videos. There are plenty of other content creators out there that will definitely say use text when it comes to creating your thumbnails. My answer would be this: don't guess, test. And what I mean by that is, for your audience specifically, do they want to read text or not want to read text? Do they want to see text on your thumbnail or do they not want to see text on your thumbnail? You could literally switch out your thumbnails and see what happens to the traffic to each of your videos. Now, if you do use text, make sure it is big, bold, people can read it, even if they're on their phone. To recap, the 5 rules that all pro YouTubers live by. 1, use eyeballs. 2, tell a story. 3, use a high-res image. 4, make sure to keep your branding consistent. And number 5, the text. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, maybe a high five down in the comments. Go ahead and click subscribe. Go ahead and slap that notification bell. We'll see you next time.